So we're here to talk about something that I suspect is on the minds of many of you, or at least I hope it is, which is how to diversify the financial industry, and specifically how to bring more women into positions of power. So one of the dangers of having this kind of conversation at this kind of event is that you're seen as sort of like a checking the box, like, great, we talked about diversity, now we can go back to talking about real business issues. So Sallie, I'm going to start with you. What can you say to convince everyone here that it's not a moral thing, it's not a fairness thing, this is a business issue, and it's going to become an even bigger one in the future?
Financial crisis?
Okay.
Would that help?
We remember that.
Well, we talk a lot about the causes of the financial crisis as too much leverage, too much greed. I would add another cause of the financial crisis are not enough cognitive diversity. Not enough people with very different backgrounds looking at things in very different ways, debating them, disagreeing about them, and coming out to better conclusions. What drives cognitive diversity is diversity of thought, background, perspective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, all that being said, the business case for diversity has been out there for years and years. Ooh, there's another study that having more women helps returns and lowers risk. Yay, this is going to do it. Except it's really interesting that, two of the most return-seeking key capitalist businesses, Wall Street and venture capital, which in theory just drive for returns, have not taken to heart the research and added more people of difference in their leadership teams, as you just saw through the numbers.
Yeah. So Ray, one thing that I think Citi has done, which suggests to me that the bank is thinking about this issue seriously, is you took a look at your global pay gap. And then you took the step of actually releasing the number of what your global pay gap is, which is not something that the bank needed to do. It's not something any of your competitors have done. So I want to talk about that decision. But first, can you just tell us what you found and what that tells us about where Citi is?
Sure. Thank you for having us here. We took the step in 2018 to do a study and to release a study on gender pay equity. And what we found that unadjusted for job functionality and seniority, that the median pay between women and men was 71%. And that was an inflection point for us to make certain that the culture that we have outlined and the values by which we live get reflected in how we address that median pay gap. And so we took the step to reveal it. The cliche goes in order to get from good to great, you have to figure out how good you are or not. And in that instance, we thought that we would take the step to make it public.
Yeah. Since you did not have to do that, and since we don't see other companies necessarily lining up behind you to do that, I mean, do you think we could use something like the laws we have? There are laws in the UK now that require companies of a certain size to operate there to report, so that we know across the board how companies stack up. Do you think something like that we should consider in the US?
It's tough to be the arbiter of other people's franchises. We can be the arbiter of ours and set our own culture and set our own tone. And to the extent that others find that important and find that they need to mind their own cultures and look at our leadership role here, if we can do that, then I think that's something for which we can be proud. We didn't do it for those reasons. We do it because it was the right reason, because the culture that we have adopted, and we want to make certain that our people recognize that we're authentic and true to the culture.
Okay. Penny, I want to ask you about a policy that is relatively new to your firm, I think, which is basically when advisors are retiring, there's a financial incentive for them if they refer their business to an advisor who's a woman or a person of color. And I think it's probably, you can imagine some people were really excited about that policy, but not everyone.
Yeah.
So talk about how you've sort of talked about that internally and how you communicate that to your advisors about why you feel like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, the reason for this, and it's about a year old for us, the reason for this was to raise awareness about exactly what Sallie and Ray are talking about, creating an environment for our clients where it is very clear to them that they have a choice with whom they work, that we are reflective of the communities where we live and work, that the organization is empathetic and of service to a broad group of people. And at this point, Edward Jones is about 20% women financial advisors, which is about in line with the industry. We know we can do better, and we know our clients deserve better. So we did initiate this idea where our retiring financial advisors are paid a little more if they share those client assets with women and with people of color. It raised a conversation that has been a very fruitful conversation. And there are as many women who don't like that idea as there are women who do like that idea. Because several of them have said to me, Penny, I don't want anybody to think that that my practice is growing because someone felt like they had to do something special for me because I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. That's not the point of it at all. We hire, attract, retain, support incredible professionals, but it has raised a level of awareness that might not have been part of the conversation as often as it could have been or should have been.
Yeah.
It's not the only way to do it, but we think it's a way to raise this conversation.
It's a really interesting policy. So Sallie, the title of our session is Breaking Up the Wall Street Boys Club. You spent some time on Wall Street, so you know that particular boys club.
A little bit.
But it's also something we're seeing continue into where you are now, which is the FinTech realm.
Yep.
This was like an opportunity. This is a new growing area. We can change everything. We can disrupt the way things have been done. But we're kind of seeing those same patterns replicate. So why is that happening?
Well, I think, look, as I thought about founding Ellevest, I think you need to have three things sort of come together in order for the company to be successful. One is you need to have a finance background, a deep grounding in finance. Oh, not a lot of women there. Mm-hmm. You got to have, a tech background and the ability to pull together a great tech team. Oh, not a lot of women there. You have to be able to raise venture capital dollars. All right, so let's be honest, right? When women walk into corporate America, we get a 20% tax on our pay just because we're women. When we go out to raise venture capital dollars, we get a 98% tax just for being women, right? Because we get 2%, women CEOs get 2% of venture capital dollars. That's a lot, there are not many women in any of these, and then a woman who's able to do all of that is tough. Oh, and by the way, there's new research that tells us that whatever a company is when it starts, when it gets to some teens number of people, whatever the diversity is, tends to persist. That if you don't have it as diverse at the beginning, it's very hard unless there is CEO, commitment to break the wheel for it to change. This whole, we're gonna do a diversity group and we're gonna, have a mentoring program. Guys, we've been doing that for, years and years and years, and if it was gonna work, it would have worked. And so CEOs, I think, just need to decide they're gonna break the wheel. I do wanna pause though, because I think it's important for us to be totally honest with each other and recognize how far we have to go in financial services. And I love what y'all are doing, and I love what y'all are doing, and the women should be thrilled about it because the bar has never been, isn't being lowered. The bar the research has been higher for women and people of color, to get promoted, et cetera. But it was just very few years ago that the president of one of the largest banks, in the country and in the world, was there and has now been accused, is alleged to have been visiting this, strip mall, prostitution ring, right? We know where he worked, and he used to come and scream at me when I was fighting to reimburse clients back in the day for missold products. And I remember this guy would come and scream at me, and I thought I had a fighting chance with him. But when you think about that level of misogyny that was occurring in that industry and amongst these individuals, I'm not sure I had a fighting chance at all. Fast forward to today, in the Me Too Time's Up moment, the research tells us that Wall Street has got a high incidence of sexual harassment. That's what the employees report. And yet the number of men or women who have been taken out in the industry for Me Too or Time's Up sexual harassment is? Anyone? Anyone? That's my point, right? It's close to zero. We can debate that guy at TCW, it's close to zero. And so, and then we have surveys of the industry saying that gentlemen within the industry are saying, well, I'm much less likely to mentor women now because I am so fearful of being falsely accused of harassment. So if 0% have been taken out for actually doing it, about 0% have been falsely accused, and yet you're seeing a backlash in the industry. So I think, you know, doing these things where you're breaking the wheel is exactly what has to be done, because if we look for business as usual, we are so far behind the start, and we're not at the starting line. We're so far behind the starting line, and it hurts all of us. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, I actually want to follow up on that point about the backlash. You know, I'm sure many of you have seen these stories saying that in the wake of Me Too, especially in Wall Street, that there's been men are frightened to mentor women, to go on business trips with their female colleagues, to be in closed-door meetings with women, and I think it's obvious the potential to hold women back that has. And you know, Ray, I'm just wondering, is that something that's on the radar at Citi at all? Do you think that backlash is a real thing? And if so, are there discussions about what to do to counter it?
Yeah, I don't. First of all, it is not confined to financial services. I'm going to be very clear about that.
Sure.
And what Sallie has outlined is pervasive corporations worldwide. I'll be very clear about that. Mm-hmm. I also want to be very clear about where we are in the context of history. This is not new. Public Law 88-83, June 10, 1963, John Kennedy signed into law equality for pay. Mm-hmm. We are now 56 years and a few days after that, where we're still having this conversation. Yeah. When it gets to the point of mentorship and male-female dynamics, the world is on notice. That behavior that was ignored years ago is now being recognized, and in our firm, there's zero tolerance for that, zero. So let's be bright, clear, and unequivocal about where we stand as a firm.
Yep.
There's no debate about that.
Now, Penny, I want to ask you, you know, you are in the position of being you're the only woman to be leading a major US brokerage right now.
Right now.
Right now.
I like that.
Right now. And you are trying to attract more women. You've talked that you're about 20%, but that you are looking to increase that percentage. So in this kind of environment, do you feel like having a woman leading the firm, is that a competitive advantage for you when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to retaining women?
Well, I think our chief competitive advantage as a firm, and my responsibility as the chief steward of the firm, is to lead our vision to serve millions of clients and help them achieve financially whatever is most important to them. We serve 7 million clients today, and our addressable market, we think, is about 40 million clients and their families. So our competitive advantage is how we serve our clients. And my role as leader, and Ray and I were having a really good discussion about this. I'm about 6 months into my role, and so I was getting some advice from Ray. And my role as a leader is to lead the vision of the firm. The vision of our firm includes serving a wide array of people. And I do have to say that I am getting feedback from our financial advisors and our clients that it is notable that a woman is at the top of the organization, and it does say something about how contemporary the organization is, about our intention and our focus on our clients and our vision. My job is to articulate that very passionately, and I find that I'm easily able to do that. And frankly, I'm finding that I'm invited to do that quite often, in part because of how I look. That's not why I'm in the role. I'm in the role because I'm the right leader at the right time. But it is helping us get the story out there about what we do for our clients.
Yeah.
Be mindful
ahead,
also.
please.
Excellence in this environment demands inclusion. Inclusion demands merit-based leadership and excellence. That's what gets reflected on this stage. People here are not here because of their race or gender. They're here because they're amongst the best and, in fact, may be the best at what they do.
Glad to be in that company. Thank you, Ray.
I've been monopolizing our panel. I want to see if we have any questions in the audience. I see one right here in the middle. If you could wait for the mic and then stand up, introduce yourself. You guys know the spiel by this point.
Tim Baker, Refinitiv. Ray, that statistic, 71%, is sticky in my head. What happened after that? Have you actively closed that gap? Were there pay adjustments automatically made? What's the plan going forwards to address it?
Well, let's be clear about where we are. Having acknowledged it and having diligenced this is something that has been ongoing. We started probably with our GPS series in 2015, trying to assess the impact of gender equality across the global economy. And we updated that in 2017. And so what we find in developed markets, that'll add circa 6% to the GDP.
Wow.
That's number one. Number two, if you look at the landscape of Citi, we're a global institution. The study was global. We are in 100+ countries. 30% of the chief country officers happen to be women. We continue to invest across the spectrum of equality, and I will add, because it is current and important, sustainability across the global spectrum. So the efforts that we have embarked upon and the investments that we're making are to make sure that we do everything that we can to keep the spotlight, the center stage on equality and compensation, and make certain that not only equality and compensation, but roles that are commensurate with talent get recognized and people get promoted to positions of authority and leadership where they should rightfully be.
I also just wanted to clarify one thing about the gap. So this is the unadjusted gap, so essentially it means, I know you explained this a little earlier, but it means not equal pay for equal work, but every woman in the organization versus every man. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's fair to say that what the gap reflects is not necessarily pay inequality, but inequality of women at senior levels.
At senior levels. And so if you adjusted it, that number goes from 71 to 99% now. If you look at the national averages, the national averages are for white women, it's 80%. For African American women, it drops to 60-some odd percent. For Latina and Asian women, it drops below that. So let's level set the statistics.
The pay gap is more complicated than a single number, for sure. Let's see, it looks like we have another question here in the back.
Hi, good morning. Kihina from Ripple. I spent 10 years at Citibank. So Citibank Blue still runs in my veins. I also spent 6 years at MasterCard and then moved into technology, Facebook, and now at Ripple. And what I want to say about someone who is a non-traditional leader by every stretch of imagination of every room I ever walked in finance and then in technology, which is even, I would say, has even less diversity, gender diversity. I would love to hear the panel's comments about pipeline, especially at senior leadership and at the board level. And saying that, I do sit on the board of Progressive, where we have a woman CEO, a woman chairwoman, and 50% of our board are women. And it is the most rock star of leaders that you've ever seen. So I would love to hear, because I've been hearing about we don't have a pipeline for 25 years. I don't believe it. And I didn't believe it when I was 21 years old. I don't believe it at 47. So I would just love to hear, A, what is your perspective on pipeline? What is the board situation? Why do we only have 17 women as Fortune 500 CEOs? The C-suite, what can we actually do about it now?
Yeah, it's not a pipeline issue. It hasn't been a pipeline issue for years and years and years. When I started at the old Salomon Brothers, back more years than I'm going to share, my investment banking class was 40% women. And you look at this over time, and they've been bringing in women. What hasn't been happening is the industry hasn't been promoting them. So as you see at Citi, as you've laid open in your numbers, that women tap out at a certain level. By the way, for everyone here who's, oh yeah, well they go off to have that work-life balance and they can't hack it and it's really tough and it's very mathematical and that's very difficult, okay? The number one reason millennial women leave their jobs today is not for any of those reasons, it's for more money. And all the stuff that we think about women and why, I mean, let's just get it all out, why they can't hack it in financial services. They're not as good at math as the guys, not true. They're not as good as investing as the guys, not true, right? You know, it's the fact they've gotten tapped out and not promoted. And, you know, as mentioned, the bar has been higher for women and other minorities, where white men have been promoted based on potential, and women and other minorities have been promoted based on achievement. So there's a higher bar, and we understand it, right? Every one of us has been socialized, regardless of what our background is or who we are. In this country, we've been socialized that white males are leaders. And so when we go to promote, that feels right to us. And we've certainly been socialized that white males are bankers. And in order for us to get through that, we need to strip away these underlying, I don't want to say biases, but beliefs that women just aren't as good as these jobs, because the numbers simply don't hold that up. And it's a matter of, you know, and by the way, I don't think we can have the next unconscious bias training, right? It really is that it has to come from the top as we're just gonna friggin' do this, and I don't care if even the women, you know, some of the women don't like it either.
Kristen, if I can add to that just a little bit, there's this phrase that I don't like, if I can see it, I can be it. And so to some degree, there's been a vibe in the marketplace. Well, women are taking themselves out until they can see someone like them at the top of an organization. I don't really buy that either. However, we did find, we have 288 regions in North America. We did find at the moment we have 20% of our financial advisors are women. Fewer than that percentage were regional leaders of these 288 regions. And we started wondering why. And there was an equal mix of women saying, well, I don't see myself in that role. So we had to have a conversation. I led that part of the organization. I had to have a conversation with them about, why don't you see yourself in that role? Let me explain what this role is, and opening their minds to it, and opening the minds of our male leadership about what non-traditional leadership looks like, and breaking mental models in our leadership of what that looks like and what we can do together collectively. Kristen, I told you I did not like the name of this panel, Breaking Up. We're talking about breaking up. We're talking about bringing us all together, men on Wall Street and men on Main Street, bringing us together to understand what leadership, vision, innovation looks like in the future, and how to be more successful in those ways.
In your reference to Citi and our board, we have 40% of the board is women, 50% of the global workforce is women. It starts at the top.
Okay, we have literally seconds, but I want to do something very quickly, which is in April, the big bank leaders were brought in front of Congress, and they were asked, who do you see replacing you? Is it possible that someone who is not a white man will replace you? Spoiler, 0 people raised their hands. So over under 10 years on a woman leading one of the major banks. Over under.
Major banks or major financial services companies?
Okay, let's say, well, you know.
Major financial service companies can be Ellevest.
Oh, okay. So much
already
cheating.
there.
Okay. All right, my over-under is a wash. Thank you very much, all of you.